This week in gaming, Namco founder Masaya Nakamura passed away at the age of 91. Skate 4 has been teased with a single tweet by EA's senior management of community engagement, Daniel Lingen. EA CEO Andrew Wilson, when questioned about Skate 4, said that they're not presently making the hotly anticipated game, so I guess that means wait for E3. Both Horizon Zero Dawn and Yooka-Laylee have gone gold. Sci-fi city builder Aven Colony will be published on the Xbox One and PS4 by Team 17. Final Fantasy XII Zodiac Age has a Western release date of July 11 for PS4. Starforge has left early access on Steam and is now free, causing some controversy. The Last Guardian has received a permanent $20 price cut. Super Mario Run has made Nintendo $54 million, and the Banner Saga Free has been fully funded on Kickstarter. This is 1RBC Gaming Weekly. First off, Starforge. Oh, poor, sweet Starforge. Alas, poor Starforge. An early disaster of early access on Steam, Starforge was released back in 2014. Unfortunately, the developers never finished it and moved on to another game, Reign of Kings, which was released December 2015. According to the players, Reign of Kings is also abandoned, much like Starforge. Now, regarding Starforge itself, it's everything that's wrong with early access games. Survival sandbox, crafting, unfinished. So why are we talking about Starforge this week? Well, last week, the developer, Codehatch Games, removed Starforge from Steam and made it free to download on their website, codehatch.com, much to the ire of their paying customers, who will never see the game that they paid for. Sure, they have access to the unfinished version, but they dropped their money with the expectation that the game would be finished. Now, last week we talked about a Kickstarter project called Early Ninja, which works by withholding funds from developers and releasing them as their games reach developmental milestones. So if a developer walks away from a game when it's half finished, they only receive half of their money. Consumers would wind up receiving a refund for half of the game's price. Early Ninja raised plenty of controversy last week for making a number of dumb decisions regarding their crowdfunding campaign. Also because no legitimate developer would want to sign up for a program that offers them no benefits or safety nets. It would really just be another stress for an already difficult job. What do you think? Would Early Ninja have prevented the disaster that was Starforge, or would such a system encourage more game abandonment? Hit us up on Twitter at OneRuleBeCool and let us know. Personally, I'm worried that a service like Early Ninja would promote the idea that it's normal to abandon your early access game if things aren't quite working out. Going back to our whipping boy, Codehatch, they already have 2 unfinished games under their belt, and I would not be surprised if they tried to make people pay for a third. Over on Twitter, quite a few folks have weighed in on the issue. Paige Maransak said that, personally, I don't think that's a good idea. It sounds like it's trying to mix pre-orders with sales. And that, ultimately, the whole service doesn't give any benefits for devs, and all it does for consumers is say, hey, you can request a refund, at which point, just pre-order. Pascal Frances, on the other hand, says, as a customer, I love that. As a developer, on one side, it gets more sales, less risky for the customer. On the other, it could be a big liability if sales are not so good. So I'd say less risk for the customer, more for the dev. As an indie one already has a lot of risk, so maybe it could be more suitable for big studios. I don't know. Overall, the response from developers has ranged from nebulous to negative. Regarding Mr. Masaya Nakamura, he died on January 22, 2017. His death was officially revealed this week on account of his family's wishes. Nakamura, known as the father of Pac-Man, got his start in the entertainment industry in 1955 when he founded Nakamura Manufacturing fresh out of college. Nakamura Manufacturing made those coin-operated rides at department stores. His company was later renamed the Nakamura Amusement Machine Manufacturing Company, from which we derive the name Namco. In 2005, 50 years after the founding of the company, Namco merged with Bandai, where Nakamura held an honorary position until his death in 2017. While Nakamura did not create Pac-Man, he's known as the father of Pac-Man for being behind the company that created Pac-Man. He had a tremendous effect on the video game industry, and indeed on culture at large. Here at 1RBC Gaming Weekly, we offer to Mr. Nakamura's family our condolences and best wishes. In an interview with Nikkei, Nintendo President Kimishima revealed the price range of Nintendo's online services for the Switch. 2,000 to 3,000 yen per year. Now, that's cheap. Super cheap. Personally, I was disappointed when Nintendo initially announced that they'd be charging for online multiplayer with the Switch. That said, if pricing remains the same across all regions, you can probably expect to pay $2 to $3 a month for their services. I don't think that's too steep at all. Further, Kimishima talked about Nintendo's plans for VR, specifically that they're studying it and have plans on bringing it to the Switch. This is exciting as it's Nintendo's first foray back into VR since the disaster that was the Virtual Boy, but it's extra exciting for me personally because I totally called it. Over on OneRuleBeCool.com I wrote an article, "Is Nintendo preparing the Switch for VR?" After all, it seems that certain elements of the Switch, particularly its handheld Joy-Con controllers, which almost seem optimized for VR, down to their gesture recognition, point to virtual reality games coming to the Switch at some point in time. So, while we have nothing down in stone, it seems apparent that Nintendo definitely has VR plans.
The blood in my veins, oh.
While we're talking Switch, this week developer AEIOWU, I'm sorry, they didn't offer a pronunciation guide on their name. Whatever you're supposed to call them, they announced that their upcoming roguelike platformer Tumbleseed is coming to the Nintendo Switch this spring. The game's currently in development for Mac, Windows, and PS4 as well. I've been keeping an eye on Tumbleseed for a while now. I really love the game's visuals, and the gameplay itself looks pretty sweet. It's not too often you see a roguelike platformer with this sort of style. Last week at PAX South, Nintendo showed off the Switch to the public. Quite a few folks tried it out, and thus far, they've had plenty of good things to say about it. Instagram user @AlexJ. said that the controllers felt very comfortable in spite of their size, and that they fit very nicely in your palms. A good sign, since I was concerned about how tiny the controllers looked. Have you had the opportunity to try out the Nintendo Switch? If so, what did you think about it? Hit us up on Twitter or Instagram @OneRuleBeCool and let us know. In video game legal news, ZeniMax was awarded $500 million in their lawsuit against Oculus VR after a Texas jury found Oculus co-founder Palmer Luckey guilty of violating an NDA and misusing trademark logos and code. They were not, however, found guilty of misappropriating trade secrets, as ZeniMax had initially alleged. Now, the suit was filed in May 2014 by ZeniMax, in which they alleged that John Carmack, who left the company to go work at Oculus, gave Oculus access to code and research from ZeniMax that they'd been doing on virtual reality, and that this code and other information was used to create the Oculus Rift. These are some pretty heavy allegations, but it's not the easiest thing to prove to a jury, or even to defend in a court of law. Now, regarding just where that $500 million will be coming from, $250 million will be coming right out of Lucky's pocket over the NDA issue and false designation, while Oculus VR will be paying ZeniMax $100 million for copyright infringement, and former Oculus CEO and PC lead Brendan Iribe will be paying $150 million for false designation. Moral of the story? Don't take stuff from ZeniMax. Otherwise, they'll get enraged. You might be doomed. The legal fallout will definitely leave you feeling dishonored. Their lawyers are familiar with all sorts of arcane legalese. If you steal from Bethesda, there will be a very swift escalation. While we're talking about escalation, this week ZeniMax acquired Escalation Studios, which was responsible for developing the snap map level editing feature of the most recent Doom game. ZeniMax, in case you're a little out of the loop, is the parent company of Bethesda. Fire Emblem Heroes, released on Android and iOS this week, is Nintendo's latest mobile game. Yes, that still feels weird to say. This mobile spin-off of the beloved fantasy SRPG series involves some silly story about summoning all the heroes from all the games, and it scales down the tactical gameplay to smaller maps, which, I'm not gonna lie, seems like an odd decision since most cell phones have significantly higher resolution screens than the Nintendo 3DS, but I digress. It looks like fun. The smaller maps and shorter missions, I'm guessing, are for the sake of streamlining the experience so that it can better fit the mobile market. Thus far, the game's gotten pretty decent reception from players, though it seems to suffer from some nasty freemium elements. I've downloaded it, though I've not yet played it. It's been a busy week. It seems a little unfortunate that Nintendo, which has been quite the innovator in the industry, is falling into so many of the same old traps that other mobile developers thus far have. Between the always-on DRM of Super Mario Run, and based on what I've heard, the exploitative design elements of Fire Emblem Heroes, I'm losing a little confidence in their brand on mobile. That said, I'm going to hold off on condemning Fire Emblem Heroes entirely until I've actually played it. Be sure to tune in next week for my thrilling condemnation. If you're fond of submarines, you might be pleased to hear that Diluvian has been released on Mac and Windows this week. It looks very interesting. The game's premise is that the world has been devastated by a global flood, and human civilization, what's left of it anyway, has largely been driven underwater, where they're trapped by a thick sheet of ice that covers the world. In Diluvian, you play as a submarine captain, in charge of managing crew, resources, upgrading your submarine, and exploring the ocean, as well as collecting bounties and fighting off giant squids. Calamari, anybody? Thus far, Diluvian has gotten rather mixed reviews. While the game's atmosphere, world, and aesthetic are garnering praise, it's apparently buggy, suffers from boring combat, and can be difficult to control. While the game's flaws are disappointing, it's nice to see an RPG set in a submarine. Last time we got one of those, it was Sunless Sea. Multiplayer action platformer Battlecrew Space Pirates hit Steam this week. The game's currently in early access and being developed by Don't Nod 11, who you may know for their work on Life is Strange. In this game, you and your team of pirates work together to fight off other pirates and try taking their gold. There's something about this platformer that kind of reminds me of Awesome Knots, if you remember that game. Thus far, the player response to Battlecrew has been positive, though there are concerns regarding the game's controls, specifically that aiming can be sort of glitchy. That said, the game's not finished yet, and this will likely be fixed in a patch. Battlecrew is available for Windows. A Kickstarter that caught my attention this week is for a game called The Dream Cube, a spatial VR puzzler that seems rather reminiscent of Christopher Nolan's Inception. In development by husband and wife team Potential Synergy, I'll let them explain things in a bit more detail. If you'd like to try the Dream Cube before backing it, you can obtain the game's demo through its Kickstarter page. I have not yet tried the game as the Google Cardboard version of the demo isn't yet ready. The Dream Cube is set to be released March 2017 for Google Cardboard and for the Samsung Gear VR.
Until now. Why is this a big deal? For users, this means they can stay immersed in incredible experiences as they seamlessly transition from one location to another, while exploring at their own pace. For VR creators, this is unprecedented because now, everything from a simple linear story to an interactive game with multiple branching storylines is possible. Some things we need to see to believe, so we're making a demo available so you can see for yourself. The link is on our Kickstarter page. We're about to release our first exciting experience that uses these techniques, the Dream Cube, and we need your help with the final stretch.
The Dream Cube is the first spatial puzzle of its kind. The objective is to escape the labyrinth-esque dream world. You'll have to uncover what makes it change around you as it tries to prevent you from waking up.
Last year, the Dream Cube demo we created in partnership with Third Wish Media and Klinken Films for the Gear VR was chosen as a finalist for Samsung's Killer App contest. Since then, we've developed 9 increasingly mind-warping levels that we want to refine before a scheduled release this spring. Initially, we'll be launching on mobile VR platforms because of their accessibility. But we've been hard at work making many of our capabilities even better on positionally tracked systems like the HTC Vive and Oculus Rift. Up until this point, I've been lucky enough to develop out of my own home office, with the help of my family. My amazing wife Anya, a wellness tech blogger, has been hard at work designing and building the 3D assets and environments.
Hello.
And my daughters have been in charge of quality assurance. Working like this allows us to take creative chances, keep the costs of development low, and actually have time to spend being a family. But the Dreamcube is only the start. Initially, we'll be releasing it on Samsung's Gear VR, but our stretch goals will determine how quickly we bring it to other platforms and how soon we'll be able to release new content. And if we reach our final stretch goal, the real game begins. VR is the future of entertainment, and we believe dreamscaping, or some form of it, is fundamental to the future of virtual reality. So please, take a moment to become a backer and help us empower the VR industry, or at the very least, share our campaign. Thank you for your time.
Another crowdfunding project that captured our attention is Sunless Skies. The latest game in the Fallen London universe, it's in the same series as Sunless Sea, and it draws inspiration from the works of H.G. Wells and C.S. Lewis, as well as the Art Nouveau aesthetic, which automatically biases me in its favor. Set a decade after the events of Sunless Sea, it's a game in which a revitalized British Empire has begun to expand into the sky. In this setting, you'll be conducting trade, discovering stories, and trying your very best to survive. It's worth bearing in mind that the Sunless games are very text-heavy. Essentially, if you're looking for something that's a bit like FTL but with a dark, text-heavy story, you're gonna want to check out Sunless Skies, which is set to be released May 2018 for Mac, Windows, and Linux. Its predecessor, Sunless Sea, which involved a submarine ride, Lovecraftian-inspired hijinks, and more, received a lot of critical praise as well as praise from its players. Hopefully Sunless Skies turns out just as well.
If this Kickstarter succeeds, this is an incredible opportunity for us to explore a Horizon of the Fallen London universe that we've only ever been able to hint at. And now players are going to be able to go there for themselves and explore new mysteries, new stories, new places that we've never been able to touch on before.
If you're looking for something a bit more action-packed, multiplayer top-down arena game Ruin hit Kickstarter this week. Aiming to raise around $11,500, the game is set to be released March 2017 for Windows. While the look of the game seems interesting, the arenas apparently are pretty dangerous environments, and if you're not beaten by the players, they might just take you out. It does seem a little strange that there's no mention of local multiplayer. This game is only offering online multiplayer, so while it seems like the sort of game that can survive online, I have a feeling that it would do much better if it also offered a local option. Also, while the Kickstarter itself looks good, the audio for the Kickstarter trailer is a bit of a disaster. The music at some points absurdly overpowers everything else. That said, I would love to try out Ruin once it's ready. The game is already pretty far in development, it's got a lot of polish, and the purpose of the Kickstarter is just for some finishing touches.
Now, our focus lies on getting the game out there, and we need your help to make that final stretch. We're not asking for much, but we're asking you to help us take the game from the state it is now onto a final state, so that we may release our game onto the world.
Finally, we have the trailer for the upcoming Galactic Civilizations 3 Crusade, an upcoming piece of DLC for Galactic Civilizations 3 that introduces an espionage system, interactive planetary invasions, and an improved economic system. Crusade is set to be released this spring.
What kind of civilization will we become? How will we grow it? How will we deal with those who claim the stars for themselves? And those who will take them by any means necessary. This is your story. The story of your galactic civilization. One that researches wondrous new technologies, trades with alien civilizations, employs spies and saboteurs, and spreads its culture across the known galaxy. You will assemble the best and brightest your civilization has to offer, gather allies, and defeat those who would stand against you. And, if necessary, prevent them from ever taking to the stars again.
Well, that's it for this week's episode of 1RBC Gaming Weekly. For all the greatest game news and editorials, be sure to follow at OneRuleBeCool on Twitter and Instagram. Follow me at Jordan_Cameron for my own views. Don't forget to visit our site, OneRuleBeCool.com, for convenient links to the Kickstarters featured in this week's episode.